Let's begin with affordability dominating the start of week one on the campaign trail. In the wake of the Liberals announcing a tax cut for the middle class, the Conservatives pitched an even lower tax rate, both parties aiming to save families hundreds of dollars.
This is a tax cut for the workers behind me who will pay 15% less on their income tax.
So if you take their tax announcement today and you take what Mr. Poilievre said, no more childcare, no more pharmacare, no more dental care.
And while affordability fixes are an early focus, the anticipated April 2nd arrival of U.S. tariffs and Donald Trump's lingering talk of annexation remain high on the radar of voters. Graham, pushing tax cuts to the front of the line. Is this just a means of getting affordability planks out of the way before the big focus on the U.S. president?
Yes. That's it. You said it, Michael. The idea is, yes, the carbon tax, consumer carbon tax is gone. You've got the Liberals saying they're going to scrap the proposed increase on the tax on capital gains, gone. So when it comes to affordability, putting up plans, yes, and people can say, yeah, one or the other, but they're both putting up planks to actually help the middle class and lower income Canadians. But the big issue, the overriding issue right now in the campaign, and will be, I imagine, within the next 5 weeks, is going to be Donald Trump and the tariffs and who is best to deal with Donald Trump. So yes, these promises right now on taxes, income tax and helping out Canadians is going to be there, pushed aside really quickly, focusing back on leadership and who's best to deal with Donald Trump.
Okay, so John, how much do you see the issue of affordability playing second fiddle to the Trump effect?
Well, I agree with Graham somewhat. I would say the whole issue of inflation, cost of living, affordability is still a huge issue. It's been a huge issue in this country for a couple of years. We've seen this in numerous provincial election campaigns. And it's no surprise that both the Liberal leader and the Conservative leader right out of the chute are coming out with proposals to cut income taxes, because this is the fastest way and easiest way you can help the most people by reducing the amount of income tax they're paying. So I do think as this campaign unfolds, this whole issue of the cost of living and inflation and affordability is going to continue to be an issue, because we've also seen this with the competing promises on housing. But I also agree with Graham that one of the dominant issues of the campaign is going to be Donald Trump, his threats against Canada, both on our economy with tariffs and on our sovereignty. And this is going to continue to be a big issue in this campaign.
All right, Graham, some interesting developments on the candidates front here in Alberta. What's to be made of Edmonton Liberal MP Randy Boissonnault dropping out at the 11th hour, triggering a shuffling of who's running and who isn't for that party where the Alberta capital is concerned?
Yeah, the smoke has yet to clear, because Randy Boissonnault, look, he's a tainted candidate because of controversies. He had to step down from cabinet, and you got to wonder, could he survive? A month ago, you would say no, of course. It's really a moot point. He has stepped down. I think he was more or less twisting his arm to get out of the way. The Liberals, according to polls, Canada 338, looking at Alberta, saying maybe 5 Liberals could win and 2 NDP, and there's 3 potential Liberal seats in Edmonton that could go Liberal. Edmonton Centre may stay there. We don't know who's going to run there. We've got, of course, Sohi, the mayor of Edmonton, running in Edmonton Southeast. Another riding, according to the polls, that the Liberals could actually win. So, yeah, things are happening last minute, because even though we knew an election was coming pretty soon, when the hammer fell, Liberals are saying, look, we can't have people like Boissonnault running for us. We have a chance to actually hang on to the seat in Edmonton. And according to the polls, because things have really changed dramatically, Liberals could, I don't see them winning 5, but the polls right now are saying they could potentially win 5 in Alberta and the NDP too, because things have really shaken up, of course, as we've been talking about for the last few weeks. So all of a sudden, things are getting serious in Alberta that the Liberals, that just wasn't there a few weeks ago.
John, it's kind of a yo-yo effect where Amarjeet Sohi is concerned. Municipal politics, federal politics, municipal politics. Now another crack at federal politics. What kind of impact does Amarjeet Sohi have on the election dynamics?
Well, it's an interesting dynamic, Michael. It's no secret that Amarjeet Sohi and the current city council in Edmonton are deeply unpopular. There was a poll out by Leger last year that cited that only 16% of Edmontonians would vote to re-elect him. And we have to recall, he got 45% of the vote in the 2021 mayoralty election. So I think Amarjeet Sohi saw that his prospects to get re-elected as mayor of Edmonton were pretty dim, especially running against a very strong candidate like Tim Cartmel. So I suspect when Mark Carney and his team contacted him to see if he would run for federal politics again, he probably thought, I suspect he made the calculation, I have a better chance of getting re-elected as a Liberal in Southeast Edmonton, specifically in the riding of Edmonton Southeast, than I do getting re-elected as mayor. And we should note that the riding of Edmonton Southeast encompasses most of the old riding of Edmonton to Mill Woods that he represented from 2015 to 2019, and also the area that he represented on city council as a councillor from 2007 to 2015. So he has name recognition and he has profile in that part of Edmonton.
Graham, Conservatives rule the roost through the majority of ridings in Alberta, but with the electoral boundary changes, how different an election do you think this could be where Alberta is concerned?
Well, there's 37 seats now federally in Alberta, so that's an increase from the last election. So they'll still rule the roost. The thing is, the majority of ridings are going to go Conservative. They always have, basically, in the federal, the province federally. So I think that there is, even though they're going to win probably at least 30 of them, there is that chance, according to the polls, the Liberals could pick up number 5 and the NDP 2, but it's still going to be mainly the Conservatives. And we'll just see how much importance that the federal and Liberals and Conservative leaders are going to take this in terms of, will we see much of Poilievre or Carney in Alberta? Normally in the past, you didn't see the leaders coming here very often, but all of a sudden now, Liberals have a chance to actually grab a number of seats they didn't have before. So this is going to be something that we're looking at more granular. Overall, Conservatives are going to pick up most seats, vast majority of seats in Alberta, but all of a sudden it becomes more interesting in the cities, and particularly in Edmonton.
Okay, so John, if it becomes a bit more of a battleground in our major urban centers, how much attention do you expect there will be on Alberta ridings, and even how much time, to Graham's point, party leaders will look to spend here?
I think we're going to see all the party leaders in Edmonton. There's no doubt that there is a possibility for the Liberals to win a few seats in Edmonton. I suspect we're going to see Jagmeet Singh, because he's going to want to hold on to Strathcona and Griesbach. And they also have a very strong candidate running in Edmonton Centre. And Poilievre is not going to want to lose any Conservative seats in Edmonton. So I expect we're going to see Poilievre in Edmonton as well. It's harder to tell the dynamic in Calgary. There has been some uplift for the Liberals in Calgary. In particular, I would look at George Chahal, who's now running in Calgary McKnight. He ran in Calgary Skyview last time, but with redistribution of the boundaries, he's now running in McKnight. He has name recognition and profile. So I would, keep an eye on Calgary McKnight. The other riding to look at in Calgary is Calgary Centre. This is a riding the Liberals have won before. Kent Hare won it in 2015. That riding also encompassed the strongest support for the NDP provincially in Calgary. So I'd keep an eye on Calgary Centre. I don't know if the party leaders will go into Calgary, but I suspect the 3 main party leaders, we're definitely going to see them in Edmonton.
The Premier is defending pre-election comments made to U.S. media that have led to accusations of election interference. Here's how Danielle Smith responded during question period Monday.
Why the members opposite are trying to goad the administration into imposing tariffs on April the 2nd. Shouldn't they actually be aligned with us in saying the exact same thing? I know that the folks across the aisle are on Team Carney, but I'm on Team Alberta, and I know that Team Alberta means doing everything we possibly can to support our energy industry, which they don't, Mr. Speaker.
The Premier did an interview with far-right media company Breitbart earlier this month, saying she pitched U.S. government officials on the idea of pausing tariffs until the election is over, claiming the trade war was hurting the Conservatives' chances of taking power, saying the longer this dispute goes on, politicians posture, and it seems to be benefiting the Liberals right now. Her office calls the interference claim offensive and false. John, to what degree do you see this as attempting to influence the U.S. administration into helping get a Conservative government elected?
Well, I thought Danielle's comments were really dumb and totally inappropriate. The last thing she should be doing is telling officials in the Trump administration, oh, put a pause on the tariffs until after the federal election because you'll be better aligned with Pierre Poilievre if he wins the election. It's totally inappropriate for a Canadian premier to be saying that. But what's even worse, Michael, is then to say that in a media interview that is being recorded and can be later be broadcast. So, it was a big mistake by Danielle Smith saying this in the interview with Breitbart. And of course, it was dredged up on the first day of the campaign, was embarrassing for the Conservatives because it interfered with their campaign launch and they had to skirt around it. But it was, to answer your question, Michael, it was totally inappropriate thing for Danielle Smith to do, and she shouldn't do it again.
Graham, of the comments Premier Smith made in the Breitbart interview, what stands out most for you, and what kind of impression does it leave of Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives?
Well, I'd say, first of all, it's the truth from her point of view. Like, this is not her. I wouldn't say, I know, as John said, it's a dumb thing to say, yes, but it's actually the truth. This is what she actually believes. We've seen this sort of trend with her. I talked to her in a year-end interview in December, and she admires Trump. She thought, his comments regarding 51st State was a joke. A lot of people did think it was a joke at the time, but she still admires him despite his track record. So this is something when it comes to her saying, yeah, I'm here for Poilievre. That's the truth, and she wants things to be paused in the U.S. regarding tariffs. That's the truth. She's now saying, well, no, I didn't mean it that way. It's absolutely the opposite. I'm here for Team Canada. The thing is, she's really Team Poilievre. She's accusing the NDP of being on Team Carney. Well, she's on Team Poilievre. That's very, very clear. This is a major problem for Poilievre because the thing is, these things do matter. I'm thinking back to 2004 when Ralph Klein, during the election campaign, federal election campaign that year with Harper against Paul Martin, you had Klein talking about restructuring the healthcare system in Alberta to be basically un-Canadian and go against the Canada Health Act. Liberals glommed onto that and then began successfully tying Klein to Harper. And the Conservatives, said that one major reason why they didn't win the election that year, Martin held on to a minority government, was because of Klein and the comments he made as a provincial premier, and they tied him to Harper very, very, very well. So I think that this is still a case where the Liberals will be able to tie the premier of Alberta to the federal Conservative leader during an election campaign. This could cause real damage because the trend is developing here where the Liberals are gaining very, very strongly in the polls. Poilievre may be standing still. Liberals are moving up. And so comments from provincial premiers can make a big difference in federal election campaigns.
Okay, so maybe, John, on that point, how do you see these comments resonating with Albertans? Do they move the needle here where provincial political dynamics are concerned?
I'm not sure, Michael. I think the UCP base strongly supports Danielle Smith. We saw that with the leadership review last year. And despite all those videos that came out on YouTube in the run-up to the 2023 provincial election, none of that seems to hurt Danielle Smith with her base. So I don't think it hurts her politically here. But as Graham said, and he's right, initially it hurt Pierre Poilievre and his campaign. Now they are able to skirt around it and deal with it. Bigger issue here, Michael, is that she is scheduled to go down to Florida later this week to do an event with Ben Shapiro from the Daily Wire. Ben Shapiro used to work at Breitbart. This is another alt-right media outlet doing a fundraiser for a private right-wing university in Florida. This is a big mistake by Danielle Smith in the Premier's office, because God knows what she's going to say down there. And if she says anything inflammatory, then it becomes an issue again in the federal election campaign.
Graham, to that point, the Premier's office telling CTV News this morning she is still set to speak at that fundraising gala involving Ben Shapiro. Surprised by that?
Well, yes and no, because I'm surprised that as a Canadian, that she would still go down there and create a problem for the Conservatives federally. I mean, as a citizen of Canada, do you want the the provincial politicians going down there and talking on this really right-wing stage. So I'm surprised that she's still going to go ahead. At the same time, she's been one to stick to her guns. But the difference is here. She'll be under a lot of pressure, I bet, from the federal Conservatives, much like Klein was back in 2004, to say basically, shut up, don't get involved in this campaign. Maybe you don't want to get involved in this campaign. Maybe you didn't mean to get involved in this campaign, but holy cow, just don't make more trouble for us. So if she's still going to go down, it seems that she'll be going down against, I imagine, the wishes of the federal Conservative Party. But Smith sometimes just pushes ahead on her own agenda. And it's a matter right now, to me, is it guaranteed she's going down? No. But if she goes down, I wouldn't be totally surprised.
And John, real quick, she obviously she's going there, or as she says, to make the case against Trump tariffs. Should that be on the dime of taxpayers?
Well, she's going down there as the premier of Alberta, but, I think it's a big mistake for her to do this. It's a long way to go from Calgary down to Florida just to do a media event with Ben Shapiro from the Daily Wire. And, I have no problem with Premier Smith or Premier Ford or any other premier making the case for Canada on American media outlets. But, this is different. Because of the controversy over her talking a couple of weeks ago to Breitbart, it is now in the news. And if she says anything inflammatory at this event later on this week, it's going to come back into the federal election campaign. So I think it's a big mistake for her to go down and do this event.
All right. We are out of time. Have to leave it there. Good to see you both. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael.